You're about to watch a moment Washington hates. Not a speech, not a slogan, not a carefully edited press release. A collision. On one side, testimony claiming daycare centers with no kids, autism centers with no patients, and public money moving anyway. On the other, a witness pushing back, saying the numbers aren't proven, the evidence isn't solid, and the real story is somewhere else. But let's confront the reality head-on. When billions are on the line, the first instinct in politics is not to verify the truth. It's to control the narrative. And what you're about to see reveals exactly who does what when accountability gets uncomfortably close.
How many organizations receiving taxpayer funds did you visit in total?
How many
organizations or ostensible organizations?
companies?
Yeah.
200.
Of the child care centers you visited, how many kids did you see?
The only place that I saw children was at KinderCare and New Horizons, which are, in my opinion, legitimate. They're large scale. They have play areas. And they also receive CCAP money, but they're the only places that I saw where there were children present, ever, at any of them.
How about the autism centers? Did you see children? Did you see patients there?
Never. So that's not to say there weren't any, but there were never any there. When I was there, never any footprints in the snow, same thing.
Mr. Weissman, you're co-president of Public Citizen, which describes itself as a consumer advocate and a pro-democracy organization. Would you agree that the fraud in Minnesota was staggering and shocking?
I agree that there is fraud in Minnesota. I don't believe these estimates are grounded in any evidence that I've seen. The $9 billion figure was based on a claim just that, well, I think that half of them must be fraudulent. I just heard a comment just saying, boost the number up. But to be clear, and with respect, you missed my testimony. No question there's fraud in Minnesota, and absolutely I share your righteous anger about whatever degree of fraud there was there.
Do you agree that any Democrat politician, or let me be clear, any Republican politician that had knowledge of the fraud and was complicit should be prosecuted?
I'm not sure what they're being prosecuted for, but also in my testimony, I described also outside of Minnesota the manifold ways that this administration is enabling fraud.
I understand.
Oh,
the reason, hold on.
The standard is that you want
to prosecute. Sir, I'm going to
people.
ask a question, and then you can answer it.
Yes, sir.
Your organization describes itself as a pro-democracy organization. I'm going to try to find out if you actually are pro-democracy or if you're simply pro-Democrat and are a partisan. We've seen the Democrats who want to change the topic. So I get you want to testify how much you hate Donald Trump. But I'm quite certain Donald Trump was not running a fraudulent daycare center or a fraudulent autism center in Minnesota. So all of the talking points about how you dislike Trump, set them aside. We will see the Democrats on this committee go down those talking points. Do you believe elected politicians in Minnesota who were aware of this fraud and were complicit in it should be prosecuted? Should there be accountability?
There absolutely should be accountability. It is not normal to prosecute government officials for not prosecuting fraud. That is not a standard I'm aware of that you've advocated or that anyone else has advocated in the Senate.
So do you think it's perfectly okay?
I did not say
if let's say Governor Walz or Attorney General Ellison knew about the fraud, benefited from the fraud in terms of bundling votes, benefited from the frauds in terms of collecting campaign finance violations, and deliberately looked the other way. You think that's not criminal conduct?
In that hypothetical, it is not okay. 100% not okay. But also, if you'll permit me, that hypothetical is in fact happening throughout.
Okay, yes, I get it. You dislike Trump. I understand you dislike Trump,
sir. It is whether I have a standard of accountability.
So let me sir, please do not interrupt me. Please do not.
I'm being clear.
Please do not interrupt me. Please do not interrupt me.
Sir.
You may answer questions after I ask them. You've heard the evidence and testimony about daycare centers with no children, with no toys, with no facilities, with windows that are blacked out. Do you believe it is possible that the officials sending millions of dollars to those fake daycare centers and fake autism centers didn't know what was going on?
Well, what I heard was claims about that, and I too have watched the video. We're both parents. I'm glad that the child care centers don't open their door for someone who's knocking there. I don't view that as evidence that the child care centers are fake child care centers, although I'm sure there are some. My understanding is that state investigators have gone to do their duty at those exact same child centers and have found that most of them actually are operating correctly.
Well, I will say it is disappointing that you had a chance leading a nonprofit that is supposedly pro-democracy to take a principled stand. Instead, you decided to defend the Somali fraudsters because it benefits elected Democrats. That's disappointing. But you know what? I'm going to give you something you're going to like, an opportunity to say all the ways you dislike President Trump, because I'm going to recognize the ranking member who will surely ask you why Trump is terrible and do everything you and he can do to change the topic from the actual topic of this hearing. Ranking member Whitehouse.
Before we get to that, I don't want to leave what seemed to be a pretty flagrant mischaracterization of your testimony without an opportunity for you to address that mischaracterization, if you would care to begin with that.
I appreciate that. Just briefly, I was disagreeing with the premise of the question that we have been displayed this evidence showing criminal wrongdoing. Obviously, where there is criminal wrongdoing, and I testified to this, I support aggressive investigation and prosecution. To the degree there is wrongdoing in Minnesota, it should be aggressively investigated and prosecuted. I'm not sure that the claim that all the evidence we've been presented today is in fact evidence of that, but I don't deny it for a moment that it is occurring in Minnesota.
Let me ask you.
Now breathe for a second, because that wasn't just a heated exchange. That was a warning flare. A witness says he visited hundreds of locations tied to taxpayer funding, claims he saw empty rooms, no children, no patients, no signs of life. Another witness says, slow down. Fraud exists, yes, but don't inflate numbers. Don't treat every closed door as proof. Don't turn suspicion into a verdict. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Both of those instincts can be right at the same time. Fraud is real, exaggeration is real. And if you care about justice, you have to be able to hold both ideas without flinching. But let's confront what the clip actually reveals. Not just about Minnesota, about the system. Notice what kept getting avoided. Not once did you hear a clean, undeniable answer to the most important questions. Who approved the payments? What safeguards failed? Who signed off, again and again, when red flags were allegedly everywhere? And why does it take citizen investigators, whistleblowers, and viral moments before anyone in authority suddenly acts shocked? This isn't just bureaucratic incompetence. This is incentives. Because in government, a program isn't judged by whether it's clean. It's judged by whether it's funded, whether it grows, whether it creates a constituency, whether it produces headlines that feel compassionate while the paperwork quietly rots. And when fraud is exposed, the reflex isn't always, show me the audits. It's, show me the politics. That's why the Trump detour matters, not because Trump is irrelevant to every topic, but because Trump becomes a tool, an emotional escape hatch. When the conversation gets too specific, when the allegations get too measurable, when the accountability gets too personal, suddenly we're debating feelings about national politics instead of the local mechanism that moved the money. But taxpayer dollars don't care about your talking points. Families don't care about your tribal battles. If money meant for vulnerable people is being stolen, the moral obligation is simple. Find the theft, prove it, prosecute it, recover what you can, reform the system so it can't happen again. And that brings us to the hardest question, one everyone tiptoes around. If officials knew and did nothing, is that negligence or is it complicity? Now, I'm not going to convict anyone in a YouTube video. That's not how a serious country operates. Allegations need evidence. Evidence needs due process. And due process needs adults who care more about truth than applause. But I will say this, if your standard for government is, oops, we missed it, then you've already surrendered, because oops is how empires rot. So what should happen next if we're serious? Real oversight, not theater. Independent audits with full public reporting, real-time verification for services billed to taxpayers, unannounced inspections with documented outcomes, strict consequences for falsified records, whistleblower protection that actually protects. And yes, If evidence shows public officials ignored credible warnings, that deserves investigation too. Not for revenge, for deterrence. Because this isn't just about one state, it's about a pattern. Big money, soft oversight, political protection, and media that wakes up late, if at all. This isn't just fraud, it's a stress test of whether your government works for you or feeds on you. So here's my ask. Don't just react to the clip, chase the paper trail. Share this. Watch the full hearing. Demand the audits, the timelines, and the names tied to approvals and enforcement decisions. And in the comments, answer this honestly. What is the standard for accountability when billions move through programs meant to protect children and the vulnerable, and the system can't even prove who it truly served? Because what happens next will tell you whether Washington wants the truth or just another distraction.